This is my first live session, so I was facing a lot of issue. So anyway, I think I rectified that issue. Okay. So in this live session, what we are going to do is we are going to build this full stack music application, and this is completely developed from the ground. We are going to use the React.js, Tailwind CSS, MongoDB, and Node.js server. We are going to build everything completely from the ground. And let me explain the project what we are going to develop in this live session. Not in this today's live session. Actually, I break this project into 5 different live sessions. So I'm sincerely apologize for my issues if you're facing any inconvenience during this live session, because this is the first live session in my as a YouTuber. This is my first live session. Anyway, I will rectify all the issues and try to overcome all the issues in the next sessions. Okay, so this is the project we are going to build, and if you have a look at it, we're having this nice UI design which is completely built by using Tailwind CSS. And this is the music player application where you can toggle and change the musics, and you can listen to your free musics which built by yourself itself. Okay, so if I hit this play button, it will start playing that music. So it's working perfectly, and you can skip the duration for 10 seconds. So it will skip the music for 10 seconds. Okay, and if I click the next track or previous track, it will work perfectly. So now it's moving to the previous track, it's working perfectly. And if you click this playlist option, so that you can see the playlist, and this animations and everything was nicely done by using the framer motion animation. Anyway, we are going to use the framer motion animation for animation purpose. And while playing songs, if you want to minimize this music player, you can minimize the music player, and that will have this nice animating background so that you can listen to the musics even when minimize the player. Okay, and then these are the filters which helps you to filter the complete song list over here. And even I can search the songs just by typing the artist name. Okay, so let me type my name. So here we go. So if I type my name, so you can see that it's filtering the by artist right now. And even if I'm typing the specific song name, that will brings the song name over here, and you can see that what song that particular user searched for. Okay, so this is the view of the user. So let's navigate to the admin page. So if you go here, and you can see the dashboard, this was allowed and visible only for the admin, who can view and change the permissions for the users and everything. If I click the dashboard over here, and you can see that how many users so far, how many songs, how many artists and albums so far created. So that will gives the live count. Okay, so then what we have to do is, let's click the user over here, and you can see that these are the users currently logged in this project, and you can see that these 2 are my own account. Okay, and here you can see that we can change the user permission. Just you have to click the admin, so that change the user permissions to admin. When I click this, you can see that, are you sure, do you want to make the user as an admin? If I click yes, that will convert the user as an admin. For the time being, I'm just keeping no. And then here also I can filter the user just by typing the name. If I search the name, so that will brings the user name. So let me type my complete name, so that you can see that it's displaying only one user over there. Then it will brings the user completely from bring back all the user once the filter is completely removed. And here if I click the songs, you can see that these are the songs that are currently added over here. And if I click this delete option, this will delete the user from the this will delete the songs from the our database. And even if you want to add a new song, all you have to click plus, and that will add the new songs over here, so that you can choose or upload your own songs and your own artist and your own album, everything. You can upload everything over here. Okay, so then if I click the artist, this is the place where I can see the artist complete informations. Okay, and this is the place where I can see the album informations. So this is the project where we are going to what we are going to create completely from the ground by using React and MongoDB and Node.js server. I hope you guys are so excited, and let's get started. So first of all, what we are going to do is we are going to create a project folder. So let me minimize this. Okay, and let me open the project folder. Let's create a new folder and name it as what we can name it as. We can name it as a project itself. Right click. Oh god. Right click. Rename. Where is the rename? Yeah, here. Rename project music app. Okay, so let me open this project. Let me close this, which is already running over here. So let me stop this. Control C, stop it. Okay, so let me close this Visual Studio. Cool, and let me open this in the terminal folder. Let's open the Visual Studio Code. So first what we have to do is we have to create two different folders. We have to create two different folders. And this is the first time I'm using the MacBook, and this is the first time I'm doing the live session. So if you're facing any inconvenience during this live session, please kindly accept my apologies and give your feedback. I will definitely rectify all the issues, whatever you face during this live session. Okay, so now what we have to do is we have to create a new folder over here. Right click, new folder, and give the folder name as client, and create a new folder over here and name that folder as the server. Okay, so client and the server. So these are the two folder structure we have to create, and inside this we are going to create all the necessary things for our React project and all the necessary things for our what is that, server also. So this is the thing we have to this is the two main folder. So first what we are going to do is we are going to create the React applications. So let's go and create the React application. So let me open my browser where it is over here, and then new tab. To create a new application, what we have to do is just search for React app, create React app. So that will open their official website where you can navigate and you can create your new React application. Okay, so if you go through here, you can see that what is the command they are using to create a new React app and everything. So just go through their official website so that you can create it. You can go through it completely and you can create your new React application. So let me go to my terminal over here. Let me open the terminal. So before creating an React application, please do navigate to your client folder, cd client. So now I'm inside my client folder. So this is the place where I'm going to create the our React application. Okay, so all you have, I'm using the yarn package, so it's better to use yarn package so that we can overcome all the disadvantages happening by our what is that, npm. So please use the yarn. Wherever, in case if you are using npm, wherever I'm using yarn, please do use npm. So I'm going to create yarn create, okay, then React app. So this is the place where I'm going to use the same client folder itself. So that's the reason I'm using the / yarn create React app. So that will create the React application completely. Okay, so it's creating. So until then, let's wait once it's completed so that we can move on to our server side. So it's getting installed, and let me create a new terminal and let me move on to my server folder. So here I have to initialize the package. So all I have to do yarn init. So that will start the some questions and everything. So all you have to do, and this is going to be my server version 1.0 description, personal music app, and entry point is going to be our, what will be the entry point we can use? For the server entry point, we can use index, or okay, for the entry point, I'm going to use the app.js. App.js is going to be my entry point. Nope. Author, I'm giving my own name, vetrivel Ravi. Yes. Private. Okay. So now if you have a look at it in your server, in your server, you can see that we're having the package.json. So we're having you can see that all the necessary informations, whatever we filled over here. And I think our React application is also successfully created. So let's go back to our client so that we can make sure our React application is up and running fine. So let me hit the command called yarn start. I'm inside my client folder, so I'm just hitting yarn start. So it's starting my deployment server, and it's loading. Okay, cool. So now our React application is up and running perfectly. So it's working perfectly. So far, so good. So let me stop it. We'll see. Oh, stop it. And let's go back to the server. We are in the server terminal. And in the server JSON file, you can see that we have to add a few more lines inside our server JSON file into the package.json. So let's go to the package.json. So here you can see that our main file is our app.js. So we have to create our app.js, and then we have to add some scripts and everything inside here. So what we have to do is right after here, add comma and press enter. So just type this terms scripts. Inside the scripts, we are going to add two commands. One is dev, it's a developer mode, and I'm going to install a package called nodemon app.js. Nodemon app.js. So here, after this, we have to run the command called start, and that is going to be node.app.js. So nodemon is the package which helps you to run our server. So this is the package we have to install. We haven't installed it yet, so let's install that first. So save the changes. Okay, so go back to your terminal and let me clear the console application. Clear. So right now I'm inside my server terminal. So here we have to install few custom packages. So let's install one by one. Yarn add. So first I'm going to use the package called Express, because that's the package which helps us to create a Node Express server. Then I'm going to install a package called nodemon. Okay, and these are the necessary packages for the time being. Later I will install one by one, and I will explain the purpose of the package, why I'm installing that package. Okay, so hit enter. So that will install that necessary packages and the node modules inside our server folder. So it's installing, and here we go. So now our node modules and everything is created, and we are getting this warning issue is because the name of the package, it's showing string does not match the pattern. Okay, so the name of the package is it's showing some warning and issues and everything. So let me change the name, save the changes. Okay, I'm using the same name as my folder name, so keep it in the same name as your folder name, otherwise you will get that warning issue. So that's fine, that's totally fine. So then what we have to do is, so we successfully initiated our package, and then right after here what we have to do is we have to create a new file. called app.js. Okay, so we have to create a new file called app.js. Inside this app.js, we have to write the necessary code. First, we have to create the Express application. First, we have to create the server. So let me make it bigger so that you can see it clearly. Cool. So const, how to make it bigger? Okay, so const express is equals require. So we already installed the package called express, so let's import that package over here. Then const app, we have to create an express app. So express, I'm calling the express app. Okay, so that will create the express app. Okay, so once you start running the application, so that we will definitely get the cross origin error. So to solve that issue, we have to import one more package called course. So let's add that package to, so yarn add cors, course cors, add it. So that is successfully added. And let's create the course also. Const course is equals require course. Okay, so now we're having the course and everything, and we have to use this package, otherwise it will throw us an error. So I will show you how to use it and when you have to use it and everything. Okay, so let's, after this, what I need to do is I have to listen to a specific port number so that we can make sure that our port is up and running perfectly. So app.listen. So I'm going to listen this in the port number 4000 because in the 3000 our React application will run. So let's start with 4000 port number. Once you start, and I'm triggering a callback function so that we can make sure whether it is running or not. So console.log listening to port 4000. So this will make sure that once it's started, and this will help us to monitor the port and everything. Cool. Then what we have to do is we have to make sure whether our URL and everything is working perfectly or not. So what we have to do is we have to use the get method. So app.get okay, and I'm going to, that's the home route, and that is going to take a request, and the response is a callback function. Okay, inside this function we are going to just return the response dot send return JSON. We will send this message, hi there. So save the changes, and let's hit the command call in our terminal. Hit the command call yarn dev, so yarn developer. So this is the script we created. We are using this keyword so that will trigger the function command called nodeman app.js. Okay, so that's the reason I'm adding yarn dev. So if I hit the yarn dev, so that will start, and you can see that it's showing listening to the port number, and yeah, now it's successfully listening to our specific port number. So all we have to do is to open our browser, and we have to make sure whether it is listening to our port number or not. So localhost 4000, and you can see that we are getting the message hi there. So our server is up and running perfectly. So our server side is completely done, and even our client side is also done. It's up and running perfectly. So let's stop this server. So we know that our server is running perfectly fine now. So okay, so let me bring this Once again, let me bring this browser to the desktop too, so that I can move back and forth easily. Cool. Now let's go back to the client folder. So what we are using is we are using the Google authentication. So we are using the Gmail authentication for our login purpose. So all we have to do is let's go and create a Firebase project. Open your browser and go to the Firebase, search for firebase.google.com. So that will help you to navigate to the firebase.google.com, and click this. Please do sign in with your Gmail account so that you can use your Gmail. So click go to console, and here click this add project. We are going to create a new project, and I'm going to name that project as project music app. Project music app. Okay. Okay. So now let's click continue. I don't want to use the Google Analytics, so I'm disabling everything. So create the project. So this will take a while, so that let it take its own time to create this project. Okay, so our project is finally done. So let's open it. So once it's opened, so you can see the certain navigation menu on over here, and you can see that go to docs, so that you can, that documentation is highly useful, and I will highly recommend the new user, if you are using the Firebase for first time, please go and refer their documentation, and that will help you to follow it completely, and you have the better understanding when you go through their own documentation. Okay, so then what we have to do is, so here you can see that click this build folder, and you can see the Firebase database and Firebase real-time database and the storage. So we have to enable all those functionalities, so that so let's click the real-time database for the time being over here. Click the real-time database. Okay, so all you have to do is just create a database if you are using the real-time database. For in this case, we are going to use the Firestore database. Click the Firestore database. Okay, so now you have to click this create database option, so that will help you to create the Firestore database. And here you can see that we're having two different options. One is production mode and another one is test mode. So we have to create the production mode. So click next. And if you want to change your nearest location, so you have to select the nearest location. So please select the nearest location. Otherwise, just leave it as it is. I'm just going to keep it as it is. So click enable. So this will take not a long time, but it will take some times. So to create the to set up the Firestore database and everything. But actually over here, it's not necessary to enable the Firestore database and everything unless or until you are going to use the Firebase Firestore and everything. I just want to show the option how to enable and everything. So let's go back to the storage and enable the storage, because we are going to use this Firebase project only for our storage purpose, not for all other purposes. So just for our storage purpose, we have to enable our Firebase storage. And for the data storage, only for the data storage, and for saving our records and everything, we are going to use the MongoDB. So make sure that your rules and everything is highly secured. I think by default itself, it is read and write permission, everything is false. Okay, so all you have to just change it to true. Then only you will have the permission to delete or update your image or uploaded video or anything, whatever you're going to store in the Firebase storage. And this is not highly preferable security rules. I strongly recommend you to go through the documentation, go through the security rules, and go through it completely, then write your own security rules. But for the time being, this will do the job. Okay, so now we don't have any folders or anything in our storage, and everything is done. As I said, for for records storage, we are using the MongoDB. So let's go back to the mongodb.com, click the MongoDB and click sign in. Okay, so here you can use your GitHub or Google account, whatever the account you're having. I'm using my Google. So let's create Google. And in this case, I'm already having that my project is up and running in that account, so I don't want to disturb it. So let me use my another account. Oops, submit. Still it's loading. Okay, so if you're first using your new account in the MongoDB, these are the settings it will use to ask. So in this case, we are going to use build new application. What type of application you are going to use? Where is it? Use other. Just let's say testing API. What kind of preferred? Choose not Python, choose JavaScript, because that's the thing we are going to use. So click finish. And here you can see that we having the 3 different kinds of options, which is really helps you. You can choose the few options. You have to pay some amount for these 2 servers if you're using serverless or dedicated. In this case, we are going to use the shared only, which is free, so that you can use freely. So click that, create, and that will create the cluster. And here you can choose what kind of cluster you are going to use, AWS or Google Cloud, whatever it is. In this case, I'm just going to use Google Cloud, and I'm going to choose this cluster, which is nearby to my location. Then you can see your cluster, what is going to use, and if you want to use much more than that, you have to pay this much of amount per month. In this case, I'm just going to use the free forever, which they provide me 500 MB maximum storage. That's more than enough for the time being. And for additional setups, if you want any backup or anything, you can enable the backup, and you can name your cluster. I'm just going to leave it as it is, as cluster 0. So let me clear the cluster. Okay, so once you created the clusters and everything, you have to create a user who have a complete rights and permissions to access your cluster cloud database. So in this case, I'm just going to make it simple. So admin, and the password is also going to be admin, and that's the user. Create a user, and so that we created the user. And here we're having 2 different options, so let's leave it. We'll discuss that later. And this is highly important, where you can access this database, from where you can access this database and all those things. So let's skip this for the time being, and let's click this network access. Go to the network access. Okay, close it. Never. So here now I need to add the IP address, so that we can that will gives the permissions for the user to access this database from only to this specific IP. Okay, so I'm going to use my current IP address. So click add current IP address, or click allow access from anywhere. That's up to you. So in this case, I'm going to use the allow access from anywhere. So click confirm. So once this status is active, so that will gives the permission, that will gives us the permissions to access it from wherever you want. Okay, so this status will change within 5 to 10 minutes, depends on your speed and everything. So now it's changed to active. So now it gives me the permissions to access this cloud database. So we successfully created the user. This is that user, and we successfully enable the network access. Now our MongoDB is up and running. MongoDB cloud database is ready to connect um with our project. Okay, so this is good. We are ready to move. And then what we have to do is, so let's move back to our Firebase project. Here we need to use the authentication, Firebase authentication. So let's go back to the Firebase authentication and get started. Click enable it. So here we are going to use the Google authentication. Just like the Google, you can use any authentication you want. So enable the Google, enable it. So choose your email. So click save. Okay, so now we have the we can see that Google user authentication method is enabled. And if you go back to the users, currently there is no users available over here. That's so far it's null. And here you can see that we successfully enable the authentication, and these are the domains which have the permissions to access those authentications and everything. And make sure that your local host and your project name, that domain name, everything is added over here. Okay, so we enable the authentication method, and let's get back to our Tailwind CSS, because that's really necessary for our project. So let's go and configure our Tailwind CSS. So let me open a new tab and search for Tailwind CSS. Tailwind CSS React app. Okay, install Tailwind CSS with create React app. We are not going to create a React app because we are just going to use this commands for our configuration of our React Tailwind CSS with our React application. So copy this command. If you are using npm, please do copy completely. I'm using yarn, so that I'm copying only the necessary things. Copy it. Go to your Visual Studio Code. Go to the client. Let me close this. This is not necessary for time being. Client. Let me open my terminal. And here, let me clear it. Clear. Come on. Where is my client? Here it is. Let me open my client terminal, and here yarn add and paste the command what you copied from the browser. So that will add the Tailwind CSS to our project. So it's added. Then what is next? We have to initialize the Tailwind CSS. So let's copy this command. Copy it. And you have to add the command called yarn. Okay, so once it's initialized, you can see that it's created the tailwind config.js, and you can see that it's created the post config.js. Okay, so you can see that these two files are successfully created over here. And then you have to add these necessary things inside our files and everything. So let me open my Tailwind CSS file. So let me open that, where it is. So this, let me copy this completely and let me paste it. Okay, so there we go. Save the changes. Okay, so these are the necessary things which is highly recommended for our project. And how to share this to you guys, so that I can share this where I can share. Oops, I don't know how to share this. to you guys. Okay, anyway, I will leave this Tailwind configuration config file as a description in the description later. Okay, so nothing yet. All these things are just the width and height which is required for our project: width, height, minimum width, and this custom screen sizes and the colors. What are the colors? Whatever the colors I created for our this project, everything is over here. Okay, so these are the configurations for our Tailwind config. So let's close that. We successfully finished that. Then let's go back here, copy this command, these commands, and open your index.js file. So you can see that it's having multiple files. It's having multiple files inside it. So let me delete these files. Delete it. Move to trash. Delete it. And let me create a new folder inside here. src, new folder. So inside this source folder, what are the files we have to create? So let's create those files and everything. So first of all, I have to create the index.js. So let's go create index.js. Index.js. So inside this index.js, all I have to create a certain React components, factors, and everything. So before that, go to your extension tab and search for ES7 React snippets. Here you can search for ES7 React snippet. This is the one. So you have to install this React snippet, or simply search for React snippet. If you search for React snippet, you can find it in the first option, and please do install that one. So that is installing. So close it. This will help you, and few more options like Tailwind CSS. Please do install that one also. Tailwind CSS, install it. Okay, and Tailwind scroll bar. Okay, so it's showing some issue, so close it. Yeah, because why it's showing that issue is because inside our Tailwind configuration file, we haven't have this package yet. So that's the reason it's showing that error. So let me comment this line for time being. Okay, cool. So now let's go back to our index.js. So first we have to import the React from React. Then we have to import React DOM from React DOM. Okay, so this is the package we have to do. Then I also have to import the index.js also, index.css also. So import /index.css, index.css, because that's the package I'm going to create inside this folder. So index.css. Okay, so we successfully created those two files. Okay, then we also have to create an app, import app from /app. This is the file we haven't created. So let's create app.js. Okay, and here type RAFCE, save the changes, and you can see that if you press controls spacebar, so it's not showing the suggestion. Why? So import yeah, here it is. It's showing the suggestion, so that will do the auto import. Okay, so we imported all the necessary things for the files and everything what we needed. Then we have to render our application. So React DOM dot render. So this is the function which helps you to render your React app. So render, inside this render I'm going to use the React dot strict mode, so that we are going to render the app in a strict mode. So this will help you to render your application in a strict mode, and I'm going to call my app. Okay, so this is so far so done. And after this strict mode, we have to add one more line. That is the line here you have to give the place where you are going to render it. If you have a look in your public folder, we're having the file called index.html. Inside the index.html, you can see this ID, root ID. So we have to render this application inside that root ID. So we have to mention it. So give the line called document.get element by ID called root. So render this app inside that specific ID. Okay, so our index.js is done, app.js is done. So let me give a little customization for our app.js so that we can make sure whether our app is up and running fine or not. Okay, so for this app, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give class name, use the width control space, oh, come on, space width screen touch screen. Okay, so take the screen height and width, and bg blue, we're going to use the bg blue, and I'm going to use the flex, justify center, items center. So that will helps our application to maintain our application in the center screen. Okay, so let me minimize this a little bit. Okay, that's enough, I think so. Okay, and then open your terminal. Now let's clear our terminal and let's hit the start. We have to make sure whether our client application is running fine or not. So it's opening and it's working, but it's not working fine. I was expecting it should be in the middle of the screen. Why? Width the screen, height screen. Why it's not in the center of the application? Inspect. We're having some issues. It's a warning. Body tag, div. It's taking the width, but it's not taking the height. Why? Why is that happening? And it's not taking the BG blue also. I think so. Our Tailwind CSS is not working fine. Why? I think we done with all the necessary steps. Yes, we do done with all the necessary steps. So let's check. So here, let me do text base, font bold, save the changes. Nothing is happening. I think the problem with this problem is with our Tailwind CSS. Our Tailwind CSS is not configured properly. It's showing some issues. / shows folder. Yeah, everything is working fine only. But why? Oops, we failed to add this utilities. Copy this, paste it here, save the changes, and then I think this is the problem. So let's restart it. And here we go. So now our Tailwind is working fine. Okay, so that's the issue, and we figured it out. So Tailwind is working fine, so that is no issue anymore. So let's close the terminal, close this and close this. We don't need it, and I don't need these lines too. Okay, save the changes. So now what we have to do is we have to create a router path. So for that, what we are going to do, we are going to install the router, React router DOM. We are going to install the package called React router. Okay, so let's go to your terminal and run this command. So let me stop the server, clear, and here I'm just going to add yarn add React router DOM. Hit the add. So this is the package we are going to add. So this is adding that package. So it's successfully added. So let's go back to your index.js. So we have to wrap this index.js with the browser router. We have to wrap this main index file completely with our router. So let's import the package, import, and import the package as browser router as router from React router DOM. Okay, so that's the package, and we have to wrap our main app into our router. So router save the changes. Why it's not happening? Just a moment. Settings. Damn, every keyboard shortcut is completely new. Format on save. Save this, enable, save the changes. Format document with prepared. Okay, sorry guys, I'm new to MacBook, so the keyboard shortcuts and everything I'm not familiar with. Okay, so now we successfully configured our router and everything. So then what we have to do is we have to go back to our app.js and we have to navigate our user to a specific route. Okay, so initially it's coming to our app.js only. So if the user is coming to this particular route, we have to navigate the user to that inside here. Instead of simply showing the name as app, what we have to do is we have to navigate the user to a specific route. So let's give the routes. We have to import the package called routes. Okay, and we have to, so you can make sure that the routes is coming from the React router DOM itself. So usually that error will happen, so make sure that is coming from React router DOM. Then we have to give the route name. So route, so that's the route name. Okay, so the route path is going to be anything the user route is coming from login, that will takes the user to the login component. Okay, so let's create a new component over here. So I'm going to maintain all the components into a new folder called components folder. So name the folder called components, create it. Inside this component folder, I'm going to create a certain files, so all the necessary components, whatever the components we are going to use for this complete application. Okay, so let's go and create that. So here I'm going to create a new file called index.js. So this is like a ledger. This will act as a ledger for our components folder, whatever because later in this project, it's a very huge project. We are going to create a multiple components, so we have to maintain them properly. Otherwise, what will happen whenever you are importing that component, the list of component import statement will be a huge number. So I'm going to maintain that import statement, everything as a separate one in the index.js. And let's create a new file over here called login.jsx. Okay, and here array fce, And I'm going to create one more component called home.jsx and ra.fce. Save the changes and save the changes. We not needed it, close it. And here I'm going to export those two components. Export default as login from /login. Okay, then export default as home from /home. Okay, so these are the login and these two packages we needed. Let's import it. And now here what we have to do is we have to use the element. Inside this element tag, all we have to do, open the component, that dynamic bracket, open it. And here I'm going to call the package component called login, which we created. So import it, and you can see that it's coming from the components folder. We are not importing component /login. So if you're doing in that way, you have to import, if you're in, let's say you have to import nearly 15 components inside the app.js. Think about that. That will import nearly 15 import statements. So that will look so clumsy, and that's not a proper way to do that. So that's the reason we created the index.js, to maintain them separately. And let's import that, close that component. Okay, save the changes and then close it. And the same way we already created the home component also. So let's create a new route for our home, and that's the path. It's going to be anything which is coming through /star. Anything is coming after. If it is coming as a login, go to login. If it is not coming as anything else, go to home component. Element is going to be, and here we are going to give the home component, and that component is imported successfully over that. So, and you can see that they are maintaining in a single line. So that's the reason we have created them as a separate file. So this will do that work, and let's make sure whether it is working fine or not. So let's restart our server. Yarn start. So that will start. Okay, so this is our app is started, and let's say login, and you can see that it's showing now login. And if I'm going to /something, and that will takes me to the home route. So our route is working perfectly and it's up and running perfectly fine. So let's go back to the login screen. So I am right now in the login screen, and let me go to the app.js. So this background color is really annoying. I'm changing the background color to our primary, because that's the color which is coming from our Tailwind configuration. And look at that. So it's up and running perfectly. Our routes and everything is working fine now. So what I have to do is, I have to go to the login component, and we have to create a button so that user can click that button. He can log in to our he can log in to his Gmail account and everything. Whatever the stuff he wish to do, he can log into that. Okay, so let's go there and let's create the login component. So where is the login.js? Here it is. So this is the login.js. Click here, and for this I'm going to use the class name as relative. Oh, come on, relative, and that's going to use the screen height and the screen width. Inside this division, I'm going to later I'm going to import a video and keep it as a background. For the time being, I'm just going to keep it as simple, and later we can add the video and everything, because you also need the assets folder and everything, right? So that I will copy this asset folder and everything in the description box so that you can access that file from there. And here, where is that assets? And this is that assets folder. I'll copy that at what is that assets folder and the Tailwind configurations in the description box so that you can later copy it. And here we are going to create a division, class name, and this is going to be in the middle of everything, right? So let's say position, that is the relative one, and there I'm going to load a video as a background. So this is going to be absolute of everything. So let's say absolute. Why I'm keeping it as absolute? Because I'm going to keep a background video for a complete screen. Above that video we have to display this option, so that's the reason. And I'm going to use inset 0, that means top, left, right, bottom, every side it's 0. And I'm going to use bg dark overlay. I'm going to give an overlay effect that is going to be dark, and whatever inside in this container, that should be a flex. And item center, and then just a moment. Okay, and then justify in the center position, and then padding 4. Save the changes. Okay, so here then inside this division we have to create one more division, div, and this is going to be a box. Inside this box we are going to keep the sign in with Google and some options and everything. Okay, so inside this I'm going to create one more div, and here I'm going to use the React icons. So let's create one more cd client yarn add React icons. So that will add the React icons package so that we can use the React icons. Let me close the terminal. And here I'm going to use the icon called FC Google. Okay, so it's not showing as an auto suggestion. That's fine. Import from React icons / FC. That is fully colored icon. So FC Google, this is the icon we are going to use. FC Google, close it, and sign in with Google. That's the name we are going to use. Save the changes. And for this division I'm going to add the styles as style. We are going to add the style as class name. I'm going to give the width full. Then in the medium device, when it comes to medium device, we are going to give the size as 375 pixels. So these are the size which is already I mentioned and everything inside the Tailwind configuration. If you open the Tailwind configuration, you can see that 350, 375, everything I already configured over there. That's the reason I'm just directly typing. So I will share this Tailwind configuration from that assets folder as a direct. You can download it and you can use it inside your project. So then I'm going to use the padding 4 in all these sides. Padding 4. Okay. It should use the background as the BG light overlay color, and the shadow should be 2XL, and it should have the rounded edges. So that's the rounded empty, and backdrop blur medium. When you're adding a background video, it should blur that background of that division. That's the reason we are adding this class. Okay, then flex, and then flex column, and then item center, justify center. Save the changes. Why it's coming like this? Okay, then inside this division we are going to add a specific class name. So let's see how this affects so far, and you can see that this is how it looks so far. and this is the place where we are going to load that video. So you can use your own video or whatever it is, you can use that. Okay, so let's bring it inside. For this division, what we are going to do is we are going to add the flex item center, justify center, and gap. It's going to be 2. Gap will make sure that there is a distance between each other, so that you can see that it's having some space between them. Okay, then we should add the padding px in x and y, left and right 4, and top and bottom 2, and it should have the rounded edges. That's the reason rounded MD, and bg card overlay, and cursor should be pointer. And then on hover, whenever I'm hovering it, it should use the bg card color, and then when hover, it should use the shadow MD. Duration, it's going to be 100. Ease in, out, ease in, out, transition all, transition all. Save the changes, and that it looks like this. You can see that. So this is the box. Okay, and whenever you are creating and if you make a full screen, when it's going to small, you can see that when it comes to the small screen, you can see that it's taking the complete width. When it's come to the full screen, it's taking the 375 pixels. So the container is looking good, and in the inside, that box is also looking good. The Google button is also looking good. Later, if you want to use email or GitHub or Apple authentication, whatever you want, you can. All you have to do, just create one more division inside over here, one more create division inside, and just keep on adding them one by one. Okay, and let me increase the size of this font. So class name, text, Excel. I think that's enough, and you can see that image size is more than enough. That icon size is more than enough. So now this button is looking good and everything is good. Let's go to the console. Okay, the console is clear. Okay, so now what we have to do this, when the user clicks this, we have to trigger a function which helps us to trigger the Google authentication provided by our Firebase project. So before moving to our Firebase project, all we have to configure our Firebase application inside our Firebase, inside our project. So first we have to configure our Firebase in our project. So what we have to do is, let's go to your project folder. Inside this source folder, I'm going to create a new folder called config. Inside this folder, I'm going to create a new file called firebase config.js. Firebase.config.js. So that will create a Firebase configuration file. So we have to import the packages from our Firebase projects. So before that, we have to add Firebase to our project. So go to your client folder and run the command called yarn Firebase. So yarn add Firebase, and I'm also installing the package called Framer Motion. So this is the Framer Motion. Framer Motion is used for animation purposes. I'm going to use that for animation purposes. And also I'm importing the package called Axios. That's the package which helps us to access the APIs and everything. So that will really helps us. And these are the 3 necessary packages: Firebase, Framer Motion, and Axios. So install it. So let them add. In the meanwhile, open your browser. Go to your browser, Firebase project, and click that cog icon over there, and click this project settings. If you scroll down, you can see here we haven't created any app for our project. So click this. So this is the web app. So click that. So you have to give a name for your web app application. So I'm just going to give project music app. So click register app. So that will create the web app. So that it will gives you the access URL and everything. So this is the command which is we run already. Firebase, we have to install the Firebase and everything, so that's already added over there, and these are all our API keys and everything. So keep it safe. This is the key thing which is highly necessary for your project. Okay, so let's go to our, so click here, continue to the console. Okay, so what we have to do is where it is up, if you scroll down here, you can see that these are all the necessary things that's which is coming from your Firebase. So just copy this line, copy it, and make sure that you're having the storage bucket, and we are not using database, so that's the reason we are not having the database. We need to have the storage bucket and your project ID and everything, so make sure that you have the storage bucket. Okay, so now we're having the storage bucket, which is highly necessary for us. And come over here, and I think that packages, everything is installed successfully. So here I'm going to paste it, and this is not the right way to keep everything as open over here. So we have to use the environment variables to keep our files, IDs and everything secure. So that we will do it later. So here import, we have to it's import Firebase /app. Okay, from the Firebase /app, I'm going to get all the necessary functions which is necessary. So get app and get apps. These two packages are necessary, and initialize the app. These three functions from your Firebase /app. So get app will helps you to get the information about your app. Get apps will helps you to get the complete list of apps so far you created, and initialize the app will helps you to initialize or trigger your application, project Firebase application. Okay, so then I'm going to use the Firebase storage also. So get storage. Oh, it's not showing the suggestion. Come on, from Firebase /storage, I'm going to use the get firestore storage, get storage. So this is the function or class which helps you to access your Firebase storage. Okay, then we have to create an app. Okay, so we have to create an app. So what you have to do is, let's const app. So we have to create an app only if that app is not initialized. If there is no app, or if that app is already initialized, we are not supposed to initialize our app. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to get the apps length. Get apps dot length. If the apps dot length is greater than 0, then you have to get that app information. That means we already have an app, so get that information. If it is not, initialize the app with the configuration which we are already having inside our Firebase config. Okay, so this is the proper and the best way to create an application, Firebase application. Then const storage, we are creating an instance for our Firebase storage. Get storage from the details which we are already having with our application. Then I'm just exporting these two information so that I can access whenever I needed it. So app, comma, storage. So we successfully exported these two informations. So as I said, this is not the proper way to integrate our this is not a proper way to keep all these keys and everything over here. Okay, so what we have to do is, we have to keep them inside the environment variables. So let me show you how to keep them. So where is that? So let me show you the file which I will be having. Okay, so we have to create an environment variable in the root directory. In the root directory, we have to create an environment variable. Then we have to maintain we have to create the variable called react underscore app with that specific name, whatever, but you have to start with the react underscore app. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new file in the client folder. So click your client folder, right click and new file, and name that file as .env. That's our environment file. And then I'm just going to copy this name where it is. Oops, come on. 2.5. Here it is. Let me copy everything from here, paste it here, expand it, paste it. Okay, because I don't want to waste your time and everything, so I just copied and everything. I'm just going to change these informations. So let's go here, copy this key, copy, oh come on, paste it. Oops. Okay, then copy, not from here, here, copy, paste it. Then project ID, copy, paste it. This is the one-time setup, so that after that you don't have to create it again and again and again. Copy it. So please make sure that you don't do any mistakes, and otherwise that will be a very big headache for us to keep track and following them and finding that issue. Message ID, paste it. And this app ID is really important. If you miss any single number, that is really a very big headache for us. So please do it very carefully and check more than one time. Okay, so then we have to use this inside our, where is it, source config, firebase.config. We have to use it in this specific way, process.env.react.firebase and everything. So we have to, let me copy it from here and I'll paste it to only one. Okay, so firebase config. So instead of this line, what you have to do is you have to use it in this way, process.env.react, copy this, paste it, and copy this completely, paste it over here, paste it, paste it, paste it, paste it, paste it. So now I need to change the auth domain. So let me copy the auth domain and I paste that auth domain. Then I have to copy the project ID, copy the project ID, then storage bucket, then messaging ID, copy the messaging ID, then API ID. So save the changes. So this will make sure that your environment variables and everything, they are maintained in a secured way. Okay, so save the changes, and all you have to do is to stop your client server and you have to restart your client server. So that will make sure this environment variable was triggered and up and running fine. So let me hit the command called yarn start. Oops. Oh, my bad, yarn start. So that is running our deployment server. There is no issues so far. And yep, I think it's now up and running perfectly. Yeah, let's see whether it is up and running fine or not. So let's go back to the login.jsx. Okay, so here what we have to do is, I'm inside the login.jsx, I'm going to create a new. Okay, so inside this login.jsx, I'm going to create a function. Once the user clicks that function, we are going to navigate that, we are going to handle that event. So here inside this line, after this, I'm going to create a function called const login with Google equals an arrow 6 function. That is going to be an arrow 6 function. Okay, so that's an arrow 6 function, and this function is going to be an asynchronous function. This function needs to wait until that pop-up open and user clicks his email account. It should wait until that actions are so far done. If it is not done properly, it will, if you didn't give this asynchronous method, this function will not wait until the pop-up appears and the user clicks that ID. It will not wait until then. So what you have to do, you have to make sure that this function is an asynchronous function. Then we have to get our Firebase app, and we have to get our Firebase authentication details and everything. Okay, so first you have to import our Firebase app. So let's go here and import app from your Firebase config. Okay, then using that app, I need to get the Firebase authentication information. So const Firebase auth is equals get auth. So this is the method is coming from get auth. This is the method which is coming from your Firebase. So import from Firebase /auth. So now this will show the suggestions for that method get auth. Now you can see that the get auth is imported, and you have to pass your app details into your get auth method. So that will get the whatever the authentications you enabled for your Firebase project, that will be listed out over here. And so far we created only the provider, that is our Google authentication provider. So the provider I'm going to use, const provider, is going to be new Google auth provider. That's a class. That's the class we are going to use, new Google auth provider. Okay, so, and I'm going to create one more variable called navigate equals use navigate. That is coming from your React router DOM. So this will help the user. Once the user successfully logged in, we need to navigate the user to the home page. That's the reason we are giving the use navigate option. Okay, so then inside this, so now we imported all the necessary packages and the everything we needed. So what you have to do is, well, in this division, I'm going to create an on-click event. On-click, call the login with Google, and here I'm just going to do the console.log, say hi. Let's say if I click this, you can see that it's working perfectly. Okay, so now what we have to do is, instead of this, what we have to do is, we have to call the method what we really need to do. So once the user clicks that, we need to open the pop-up. So if you go to your Firebase and click this docs, and if you search for sign in with pop-up, sign in with pop-up, and you can see that using Google authentication with JavaScript. So here you can see that, you can see what is the authentication provider we are using, and how we are getting the authentication, and how you have to use your authentication, and how you have to call the sign in with pop-up and everything. that they clearly explain everything. So all we have to use this method, and we have to supply our authentication, our provider, to this particular application, to this particular method. Okay, so let's go back here, and as this function is a asynchronous function, so you should use await sign in with pop-up, and you can make sure that sign in with pop-up was imported in your Firebase authentication, because that function is coming from there only. So we have to supply our authentication and our provider, right? Auth and provider. Okay, so let's supply our Firebase auth, which is the instance which we created, then supply our provider information. So if everything is fine, this will return a promise .then, and through that we will get the user credentials. So let's create a parameter, and I'm calling an arrow6 function, and I'm just going to console.log user credentials, save the changes, and let's go here, and let's go here. Now if you click this, that will opens this pop-up, and you can see that it's running our application, and it's asking the ID informations and everything. So if I give this, and you can see that it's printing our user authentication, our user credentials, all our user details, the name, email ID, and everything, whether the email is verified or not, and the refresh token, everything. So what we have to do is we have to supply these user credentials to our backend server. Then we have to validate our user information, so whether the provided user informations are already in our MongoDB database, or we have to recreate this user or not. So we have to do some custom validations and everything in our backend database. So that's what we have to do next. Okay, so now what we have to do is we have to do some customizations in here. So now we are getting our user credentials and everything, but the problem is every time when you refresh this page, it will ask the user to log in again and again and again. So we are not supposed to do this, because once the user is already there, we are not supposed to be inside this page. And once the user loading the web page or reloading this web page, we have to check the authentication changes. If there is any changes in the authentication, then if the authentication token is not valid, we have to allow the user to log in. If it is valid, we have to allow the user to the home screen. So there are lots of steps and important things in that. So what we have to do is, let's go back to our app.js. Navigate to your app.js, because that's the place where the main routing and everything is happening. Go to the app.js. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a state to monitor the state, whether there is a changes or anything in this state or not. Okay, so let's say in here I'm going to create a state, use state snippet. Okay, so use the use state snippet. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to type the variable called auth. Press your tab key, don't press anything else, press your tab key. Initially I'm going to set it as false, the authentication state as false. Okay, and in the local storage I'm not going to store the complete user information, I'm just going to keep a boolean value. If this authentication value is true, then allow the user to the home page. If this auth state is not true, then allow the user to login screen. Okay, so what we have to do is you have to set this to window dot local storage dot get item, get the item name as auth, auth. If this auth is equals to true, get this information only if that information is true. And please make sure I'm saving it as an string value, not as a direct boolean value. Okay, I'm setting a boolean value only if it is false. If it is otherwise, I'm just saving it as a true. Okay, So now what happens when the page gets refreshed? It's showing an error because use state is not imported yet. Come on, use state, save the changes. Now the use state is imported and there is no issues. And if I go to the applications, if I go to the local storage, local host, and here you can see that auth state is true. It's set as the auth state is true. Okay, so now it's setting the auth state as true. Why it's setting the auth state as true? This is not supposed to set the value as true. Delete it. Delete. Oops, it's not deleting. Clear. Oh, come on. Oh, okay, now it's clear. Refresh. Yeah, nothing is there. Everything is clear. Okay, so then what we have to do is we have to check the authentication. We have to check the authentication. So if there is no, currently you can see that in the local storage there is no auth variable. We don't have that auth variable over here. If that auth variable is not there, or if it is false, we have to navigate the user to the login screen. We are not allow the user to directly open that home page. What I'm trying to say is if I'm rerouting to home screen manually, you can see that it's going to the home screen. This should not happen. Okay, so that's what we are going to restrict now. So what you have to do is right after here, okay, right after here, I'm going to use an use effect method. Use the use effect method. So in this use effect, inside this use effect method, we are going to check the authentication changes or anything. If there is any changes, we are going to reroute the user, and this use effect will take two parameters. One is your function and another one is your dependencies. So make sure that you give this empty dependency that will render this use effect only one time at the time when the component is rendering. Okay, so now here what we are going to do is we are going to check the Firebase authentication. Is there any changes in our authentication or not? So to do that, we have to import our app first. Import app. Okay, so here I'm going to get the Firebase auth. We need to get our authentication details and everything. So get auth. So this get auth is coming from your Firebase auth. So let me bring this package. Oops, let me bring this. Oh, come on. Bring it down over here. Okay, so Firebase auth. So get auth from our app information. So now we have our authentication information. Then I'm going to use const navigate as an instance. I'm going to use a hook called use navigate, which is coming from your React router DOM. Use navigate. This will help the user to navigate, as I said. Okay, so these are the two informations which is now highly important. So we have that information. Now inside the use effect method, I'm going to, from the authentication, from our application authentication instant, I'm going to use the on auth state changed. If there is any changes happen, that will be monitored by using this specific method. Using this method, I'm going to get the user credential. Okay, and I'm just going to do, for time being, console.log user cred. Save the changes and let's go back to the console. And now we can see that we're having that user credential because we already logged in successfully. We're having that user credential. That's the reason Even if you are refreshing, it's having that information. So let's click refresh, and you can see that still we having that user on auth state change, because still that refresh token is valid. That's the reason we are getting that information. So what we are going to do is, if I'm having the user credential, okay, if we are having that user credential, we are supposed to allow the user to our home screen. Otherwise, what we have to do, we have to block the user information. Okay, so we have to do two important things. If we have the user credentials, we have to extract that refresh token, we have to pass that refresh token to our backend, and we have to validate that refresh token, and we have to extract the information from that refresh token. That's the one important thing. Another one, if we don't have this user credential, we have to set the authentication method state as false, and we have to reroute the user to the login screen. So that's what we are going to do now. Okay, so let's do that now. To monitor that, I'm going to create use state snippet, and let's say auth set auth use state snippet auth state set auth state. This is going to initially, it's going to be false. Okay, initially that is going to be the false. Why we don't need that? Because actually we already having the auth and everything over here. Okay, let's use that one. Okay, so here we have to get the refresh token, right? So what we have to do is, from the user credential, we have to get the ID token, get ID token, that will return a promise dot then, and then through that we are getting the token. Through that we will get the token, and inside here, for time being, I'm just going to do the console.log that token. We are going to print that token. If there is no user credentials, then else. If there is not, else what we have to do, set auth state as false. Set auth state as false. Okay, and then we are going to manually change our local storage, window.local storage dot set item. We already on login, we are setting the auth as true. Here we are going to change the state as false. Okay, false. Then navigate the user to the /login route. Okay, so if there is a token, we are printing. If there is not, we are setting the local storage to false, and we are setting the navigate the user to the login. So what we have to do now, all we have to just go on, and you can see that now we having the refresh token, but still you can see that it's not working fine. Why? Because still we don't have the local storage, auth is empty. So let's re-log in one more time. Use this account. Okay, what happened? Local storage, still it's getting cleared. Where is the login? Login. Here, this is the login. Okay, so on login we haven't set the information, so we have to set that information. So what we have to do, window.local storage get item. We are getting this item, so that is not We don't have that item yet, so that's the reason it's not setting that information. So the best way is to approach so what we have to do is we having this set auth method over here. So let's pass that set auth method as a prop to our set auth equals set auth. Okay, so now let's receive this property in our login. Set, let's copy it, we don't want to make mistake. Copy, paste. Oh, come on. Copy, paste. Okay, set auth. On the successful login over here, this is the place where we are printing the user credential. On successful login, we have to manually change that credential. We have to manually set the auth state as true. We have to manually set the state as true. We are changing that state. Then window.local storage dot set item auth, comma, save the changes. So now this will set that local storage as true. And here also you have to get that information. So here also we have to, so this is why, because you have to clearly understand this is the app which is loaded first time. Whenever your app is getting loaded, we have to get that logged in user information. If the user is already logged in, if you don't logged out properly, you have to fetch that information. That's the reason we are checking here. And if the user logging in first time itself, on that time also you have to check your authentication information. So over here also you have to write the same line. Let's copy and paste it, and we don't need this if and else. Okay, so if we're having that user credentials, then console.log user cred. Okay, if you don't have that user credential, if we have that user credential, navigate the user. Where you have to navigate to the home screen, then replace the URL as true. If you don't have, else if the user credential is not valid, then you have to change the state, set auth state as false. Okay, then you have to navigate the user / login back itself. Okay, so let's see whether everything is working fine or not. Okay, so let's see whether the everything is working fine or not. Inside here also, instead of printing this, let's get the token information. Copy this, paste it. So let's click this. Currently there is nothing. If you click this and look at that, so it successfully rerouted the user to the home screen, and you can see that now we're having the auth state as true over here, local storage. Now if I go to login, still it's coming to the login screen. If the user is already there, Okay, so we have to check the same what we are missing. Okay, let's create one more use effect function. Use effect function. Click, let's create the use effect. Come on. While rendering, this will check if we have a local storage. Only if in the window it's keep on showing an issue. Oh, come on. Use effect. Arrow 6 function. An array. Here, if in the window dot local storage dot get item, we are getting the auth information. If the auth is equals to true, if that is equals to true, then navigate the user to our home route. Replace true. So this will now, if I refresh this, okay, not happening. Why it's not happening? Local storage dot get item. I think this is not supposed to be here. This is supposed to be here. Now this will validate perfectly. I hope so. There we go. Look at that. Now even if you're logging in to the login, that will not allow the user to go to login. It will reroute the user to the home screen. It's because we already having that auth as a true. If it is not true, then it will allows the user to go to that login screen. Okay, so that is the important thing. And here we have to do the same thing. If the user is not logged in, then you have to set the user to that particular. If here, this is what it's happening over here. If the local storage is, we are checking the user credential over here. If there is a credential, then it will be fine. If there is no credential, then it will take the user, set the local storage as false, and it will reroute the user to the login screen. So everything is working perfectly now. So now all we have to do, what we have to do is, we have to pass that refresh token. If you go to the console, you can see that we are getting this refresh token. We have to send this refresh token to our backend server. Then we have to validate that refresh token so that we can make sure that the logged in user informations or everything is a valid and it's working perfectly. Okay, so till now what we have done, so let's have a quick recap. Till now we just created two different folders, client and server. We created our backend server but haven't added any extra code in it. And here we have created our client React application. We implemented our Firebase project and we implemented the Google authentication, so that now we are getting the refresh token from the user credentials, and we just managed to reroute the user by using the React router DOM. This is what we done so far. So the next step, what we have to do is we have to pass this refresh token to our backend server. Then we have to validate this information. Okay, so let me open the chat. Okay, so we're having okay, so far we're having Good. It's going good. So then what we have to do is, cool. So now let's go back to our server. So let's go back to our server coding. Just a moment, give me a minute. So let me close everything from here. Let me close all. Okay, so let me close all and let me collapse everything. Go to your server app.js. Okay, so now this is the file, our server, backend server, which is not up and running. So to work with our backend server, we have to install a software called Postman. So go and search for Postman. So I'm just downloading the Postman software from there. So I'm downloading the Postman. So please do download this software, and that which is really helpful when you're working with APIs and everything. And we definitely need this Postman software to make sure whether our APIs and everything is working fine or not. Okay, so let me open it. Okay, so let me sign in with my account. Sign in with Google. It's me. It's asking authentication token. Copy the token. Paste it. Okay, so now it's signed in and it's opening. Still opening. Okay, cool. Where is my workspace? So I'm using my Postman account itself, so that I do have all my workspace and everything. So now this is my workspace. Okay, so I already created this is the file which I practiced. So here I'm just going to add one more new collection, and I'm giving a collection as project music app. Okay, so inside this project music app, we are going to create a new request. Okay, so let's go back to our okay, so go back to your terminal, go to your server, and let's start our server yarn dev. So let's start it, and this, it's listening to the port 4000, so it's running now. So all you have to do, keep it get request, and just type, where is my browser? Let me open my browser and search for localhost, not 3000, 4000. So every time we can't run this like this, so that's the reason we installed our Postman app. So now if I click this send request, and you can see that we are getting the messages hi there. So our server is up and running perfectly, so that will make sure. So now what you have to do is, we already using this core CORS cores. Then what you have to do is, we have to we have to use the MongoDB. We have to connect our MongoDB with our backend server. So let's go back to our MongoDB and go to our database. Okay, so you can see that our cluster is up and running fine. So here you can see that connect option. So click that connect. In this case, we are going to use the MongoDB. We are not going to use the MongoDB Compass software. We are going to use the click the connect your application. Click it and make sure you are using Node.js. Okay, so this is your connection string. This is your connection string, and this is your user, and you have to type your user password over here. Let me copy it, go back to here, and then here let me check how I just in the environment variable db string. Yep, okay. Okay, so let's me go back to that browser. Okay, so here now what we have to do is right after this line, this specific line, I'm just going to use we have to use the mongoose package for this specific thing. We have to use the mongoose. I'm using the mongoose package. So this package is really important. So we need to import we have to use the MongoDB, and we have to install the mongoose package. So we are using the mongoose package to connect our MongoDB with our database. Okay, so what we have to do is first we have to add the mongoose package. So let's go and add that mongoose package. So Control J, go to this terminal and go back to our server. So here just add yarn add mongoose, mongoose, add that specific line mongoose. So that will add the mongoose package with our. So you can see that it successfully added that mongoose package. So then what we have to do is we have to import that mongoose. So const equals require mongoose. So by default I'm just importing, by default I'm importing the default mongoose. Okay, by default I'm importing that mongoose. Say the change. Okay, then what we have to do is we have to make sure that cross origin as true, because we are going to use this cross origin. What is the cross origin is because we are going to use this server with our React front-end application. So we are that it will shows the issuers that we are trying to use the front and back end. So that will throws the cross origin issue. So to solve that issue, all we have to use that force package which we downloaded. So app.use force, and we have to give the origin as true. Okay, so let me give semicolon, keep it as semicolon, and for the time being I'm just commenting it, and I will show you what is the right time to enable it. Okay, so then what we have to do is we imported the mongoose package, then we have to use the mongoose connect. Okay, so then what we have to do is, so let's use the mongoose dot connect. This is the function which helps you to connect your MongoDB with your mongoose. So we have to copy the mongoose connection string once again. So let me click copy, and here I'm going to create a new environment variable file .env, and here I'm going to give database string is equals, let's paste it. Okay, and instead of this, I'm going to type my password. So please type your own password which you created, save the changes, and I'm going to restart my server. Yarn develop. So that will restart my server, and over here in the mongoose.connect process.env, I'm going to use this db string, copy and paste it, db string. Then you have to use this use new URL parser object, and you should use this object. It's because you will get some depreciation warning. So if you don't want to get any depreciation warning or anything else, you have to use this use URL parser as true. Okay, and then what we have to do is, I'm just going to close this function. So now we have that using this connect method, we just connected that MongoDB. Then what we are going to do is, we are going to create the connection, mongoose.connection. Okay, mongoose.connection. So then we having two different functions. Once the connection is triggered, that means the connection is opened. I'm calling a callback function, and that will shows in the console as a message connected. Okay, if there is any error on that time also, I'm calling a callback function, console.log. I'm giving a message instead of sending this message like this, the best way is to get the error, pass the error in the parameter function, then console.log that error. Use the dynamic string literals error. What is that error? That is the dollar and error, ERRO. Oh, come on, ERRO. Yeah, this is that object. So now it's showing our app is crashed. It's crashed. Why it's crashed? I think we are getting some issues in the connect method. Use new URL parser, maybe because of this. Close it, save changes. Still we are getting crashed. Control C, we are getting an issue. Undefined. We are getting undefined process. Oops, my bad. That's not an issue. Process.env dot. That's a mistake. Still we are getting crashed. Stop the server. Rerun the server. Why we are getting crashed? Undefined. It's not taking the connection string. That's the problem. Control C. Control V. Save the changes. Now we are getting connected. The problem is with our local storage. Yes, my bad. So I missed one important thing. What is the problem is? So this problem is happening because It's not like our front-end application. In the front end, we can directly use this .env, but in the back end, what we have to use is we have to import. We have to import this .env package. So let's go ahead and add one more package called yarn add .env. Yarn add that .env. So this will add that package, and then all you have to do is right after here, just run this command require .env/config. Okay, and then stop your server, save the changes, and now restart your server. Look at that. So now our environment file is getting loaded and we are getting this message as connected. It's all because of this specific package. So it's not taking previously. What's the exact issue is I missed the dot over here. Still after that, it was not taking our environment variable name. It's because we haven't installed this package and we haven't configured our environment variable. Then after that, I just stopped the server and restarted it. Now it's picking up this entire information and it's loading and it gets connected to our MongoDB. Okay, so connection to our MongoDB is successfully done. So now what we have to do is we have to get the user token from our front-end application. Then we have to validate that information. Okay, later to this project, we're going to have a multiple routes. So we have to use our routes properly. To monitor our routes properly, I'm just going to create a new folder called routes. Whatever the routes I'm going to create, I'm going to keep it inside this folder and I'm going to use it. Let's say for user route, whatever the information needed for the user information, that will goes to the user route separately. So let's do that now. Okay, so let me create auth.js. That's for user or user.js, whatever. I'm keeping it auth.js. Okay, and let's go to the app. So here what we have to do is let's say right after here, let me close this, and here this is going to be user authentication route. Whatever the user route or user authentication, everything is going to come over here. Then I'm going to create const user route is equals require ./routes/auth. Okay, then use that app.use. If anything is coming through this specific route, API/users/ navigate that to the user route. Okay, that means from in the Postman app over here, we're having the Postman application. From this Postman application, if I'm sending a request like API/users, if I'm sending a request like this, users, after this anything like /login or get info or delete user, something like that, that will reroute the user to this particular route. Okay, so now I'm going to the auth.js. Inside this auth.js, what we have to do is we have to use the we have to create that what is that router first. So let's create the router. Const router equals require express dot router. This is an instance you have to use to navigate the user to the proper router. Now from the router, I'm going to use the this is going to be the get method, get /login. If it is coming as login, asynchronous, let's say response, sorry, request and response, an arrow 6 function, then return the response.json as login. We are sending this as a message. Okay, so let's save the changes and let's make sure it doesn't crash. Oh, it's crashed. Control C, let's restart it. Again, it's crashing. What's the problem this time? Requires a middleware function, router.use. Oops, I missed that one. So what we are missing, app.use. I given this function app.use, anything is coming through that, you have to reroute the user to that one. And here that is also perfect, no issues on that. Router dot, oh my bad, we have to export that router. That's the reason it's not showing up over here. We have to export this router. So module dot exports equals router. Save the changes. Only if you're exporting it, okay, this will work perfectly. Look at that, now it's working fine. There is no issues on it. Okay, so now let's go and verify it. /API/users/login, users/login. If I'm sending a request, and you can see that login, we are getting that request, login with Google something. If I save the changes, and now if I'm sending a request once again, you can see that we are getting the message as login with Google. So from the local host 4000, that will comes over here. Okay, that will comes over here, and once it sees this route API/user, that will change that navigation to this particular auth.js. Once it comes inside, I'm using the router object to get the router information, and I'm checking this login. If it is login, I'm just calling this API router. Okay, so this is up and running fine. So now what we have to do is, we have to send the information. What information we have to send inside this function? We have to send the user information inside this method so that we can validate the user token. Okay, so then we can finish the live session for today. Okay, so that's the important information we have to do. So we are going to send the token to this specific function. We need to send the user token to this specific function, and that token we can get it from the login screen. From once the user logged in, we can get that information from that. Okay, so now the important thing is how we are going to send that refresh token. If I go here, user validate, in the headers, you can see that inside the header we have to set the authorization, and we have to use this bearer token. We have to set this bearer token. So let's say, let's go to our project music app. Okay, and here let's go to the headers. Inside this headers, I'm just going to type authorization, and here value, we are going to use the bearer, and space, this is the place where we need to paste our header token. So let's go back to our browser and go to your React application, and this is the token we needed. So let's refresh it one more time. So we got this refresh token. So copy this refresh token from here to here completely. I think I'm missing the E. So copy it from here, Control C, and Control V. Okay, so one space between this bearer and this term. So now we are sending this the header through the request. So what I need to do is I need to capture that header. So let me capture that header alone. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to capture that header. So I'm just return the response dot send. We'll get the request dot headers. From the headers I'm just getting the authorization. Let's see whether we are getting that or not. Look at that, we are getting that bearer token and everything we are getting through our header. So instead of checking in this way, what I'm going to do is, if there is no authorization headers, there is no token in our header, then we have to send it as return response.status as 500. 500 means internal server error. Then we are sending the message as invalid token. Okay, the token is not found or invalid or something else. If it is, this will happen only if there is no token. Otherwise we need to get that token equals request dot headers dot authorization dot split. We have to split it because we having a space between these two information, so we have to split them. Split will help you to split once you find an empty space, because in our refresh token we don't have any empty space or anything. So that's the reason we are using the empty space between that empty space. Then I need the first index, not the 0th index. If you split it, this will become 0th index and this token number will become the first index. I'm getting that first index alone. Then I'm just trying to return response dot send that token. Let's see how we are getting now. Now if I hit send, now you can see that we are getting only that token alone. So it's working fine now. Now what I have to do is I have to validate this specific token. To validate this token, we have to do some required things in our server side project. So before that, we have to add the one important package to our server. That is nothing else. We have to add the Firebase admin functions. We have to add the Firebase admin. Then only you have the privileges to access your Firebase projects and everything. So if you go to your where is that, usages and permissions. Okay, so here general, not general, service accounts, not service account. Where is that, usage and permissions? Here it is, integrations. Oh come on, I forgot that place where it is. Usage and permissions. Project settings. Yes, it is. Advanced permission settings. Not this one. Where did I? Service accounts. Here it is. This one. Service accounts. So if you go to the cog and click the usage and permissions and change that to service accounts, you can see your admin, Firebase admin security key. So what you have to do is you have to copy this line and you have to get your service account key.json. So you need to have the service account key.json. So where you have to implement it, so what we have to do is, let me explain clearly. So in this server folder, we're having a folder called config. Inside this, we have to create the Firebase config and we have to add these lines. Then we have to keep your service account key. We are going to generate it and we are going to keep it inside the server folder. That's what we are going to create it now. So let's go back to your project folder, and inside your server folder, let's create a new folder called config. Inside this config folder, let's create a new file called firebase.config.js, and inside here we need to add these lines. Copy it and you have to add these lines. Okay, and here you can see that we are using the Firebase admin package, but we haven't add that package. So add that package, yarn add Firebase admin. So that will install the Firebase admin inside your server folder, so that you have all the admin privileges to access your service accounts and everything. And we have to create a new JSON file in this name. So let's create a new JSON file, service account. It's better to generate the key first. So click the new generate key, copy it. So this is the JSON file. So keep this file securely. And I'm just going to bring this file to our Visual Studio Code, where it is. Oh, come on. Inside this config folder. Okay, inside this config folder, I just bring it. Then what I have to do is, instead of this name, I'm just going to rename it, paste it. Then I'm just going to change this. One second. I'm just going to change this path. So we need to access that path. So path is going to be /service account JSON. So this will, the Firebase config will access that service account from there. Okay, and all you have to do is, we have to change this. Instead of var key, I'm going to change it to const, and I'm going to export it. Okay, we having the credential now, and we need to export it, then only we can use it. Modules.exports as admin. So now I can use this credentials and anything everywhere, wherever I needed it. Okay, so now what I need to do is, let's go back to our auth.js. Okay, so now I need the admin privileges which we having from our, so let's restart our server, yarn developer. So that will restart our server, close the changes. And in our auth.js, so first what we have to do, we have to import our admin privileges and everything. Const admin is equals require, that admin is coming from /config/firebase config. Spelling mistake, my bad. Rename config. So here it changes config. Okay, so now we're having the admin privileges and everything. So then what we have to do is, we're having the token over here. So now I need to decode that token. By using the admin privileges, I'm going to decode that token. So until this decode, this function needs to wait. So that's the reason I'm going to use the asynchronous function. Okay, so asynchronous function. So let's try and use the catch. Okay, so we are using the try and catch. In case if there is any error is happening, we need to handle it properly. So that's the reason. So I'm just returning this as response.status as 505.send. I'm sending the error in the JSON format. JSON, send this message object with this error code. Whatever the error you are using, let's send that back in an object as error. Okay, now we need to decode that information. So const decode value, because we are not getting the user information, we are getting the token. From the token only we have to decode the value. Okay, so token await, this function needs to wait, and we are having the admin. So we are using the same private keys only, we are using the same private key. So this admin will knows that whether the token is coming from this project or not. So admin dot auth, okay, we have to auth. Then we have to verify the ID token, which I'm supplying to this function. Okay, so I need to check if you don't have that decode value. If it doesn't have a decode value, what you want to do, just return the status, copy, paste it. Instead of this, unauthorized, authorized, and authorized. If you having that decode value, else if the user have the decode value, then what I have to do, I'm just returning the user return response dot status 200 dot JSON. I'm sending that decode value back. Let's save the changes and let's make sure whether everything is working fine or not. So hit send, and now look at that. We are getting that decoded user information. So this is the information. We have to save it in our MongoDB and we have to send it back to our front end. So we successfully decoded that value, and now all we have to do, we have to save this information. To save this information, we have to create a new folder called models. Inside these models, we are going to create a separate model for each, and models are nothing but schema for our database. So first schema what we are going to create is our user schema. So user.js. Inside this user.js, what you really want to add is we have to create const. We have to import the mongoose first. Const mongoose is equals require. So this is the first table in our database we are going to create. Okay, const user schema. So let's better use the uppercase. User schema. User schema is equals mongoose dot schema is a class we are going to use, and inside these and everything is in multiple objects. Okay, so first I'm going to use the name. I'm going to store the username. Name is going to be data type. What kind of data type it's going to be? It's going to be a string data type. Then whether it is required or not. This is required, so true. Each user should not skip this value. Okay, then after the name, I'm going to store the user email because that is highly important for us, user email, and that is also going to be type string. Let me copy it and I'm going to paste it, required. Then we need to save the image URL of the image, user image URL, and that is also going to be string and it's also required. Then user ID, which is coming from our token itself, we are going to save that information and that is also required, and we have to save that information. Then we need the email is verified or not. Verified, email verified, and that is also going to be a string. Otherwise what you can do, instead of string we can use it as a boolean, and that should be a required. Okay, then a role, what role that user is going to perform. Because whenever the new user is signed in, that new user will be assigned as a role as a member. Later I will change that user to as an admin or something else, so that I can manage the user roles and everything. Okay, so let's save that user as a role. So the role is going to be type string. Then the auth time, when the user is authenticated. This is highly important. You have to manage this authentication time. So auth time is highly important. Okay, so auth time, and that is a string. And after everything over here, once you completed everything, just add comma over here. And here we have to manually enter the timestamp. You need to make sure that timestamps is true. Then only MongoDB will automatically provide you the timestamps. Okay, so make sure that is enabled. So timestamps true. Once everything is done, so why it's not keep on formatting? Okay, so once now we can see that there is no issues in it. Timestamps is true. And after this, I need to export this module dot exports equals mongoose dot model, and that model name is going to be user model. And this is the collection name which is going to be created in our MongoDB. And for that we are giving the permission to use our own user schema. Okay, so save the changes. So now our user.js is successfully done. So now what we have to do is, so let's go back to our auth.js. Okay, so if you go back to your auth.js, and here inside this auth.js, this is the place where we are sending our decode value information. Okay, so what we have to do is before saving the user information, we have to check whether the user is already in our database or not. If that user is already in our database, we just have to update our user authentication time only. If that user is not there, then we have to create a new user. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure whether the user is already in our database or not. To do that, first we have to import our user information. So const user require from /models/user. We'll get the user object from there. Then here what we are doing, if /checking user exists or not, already that user is already exist in our database or not. That's what we are going to const user exists equals await user dot find one. Okay, if you have a look at it, we having that user ID, so we need to fetch by using this user ID. Copy it, find the user by using this user ID object. We have to supply the value, what user ID, get that same user ID from the decode value, use that user ID. So using that, it's go and search this specific user ID in our database. If there is that any value, that will return an object. If it is not, it will not return an object. So what I'm going to do is, let's say if not user exists, so here only what we have to do, we have to create a new user. So let's say response return response.send need to create, else we have to update. So here for the time being, I'm just saying return response.send need to update. So let's save the changes and let's go here, and if I click send, it's showing need to create, because in our database we haven't have that particular schema. If I go here and if I click browse collection, we doesn't have that collection yet, and we don't have that. See, the user schema is created now. Look at that, user schema is created now, but we don't have any informations in it, right? So what we have to do is, I just created user alone only. How does it creates the users? That's quite confusing. What the medical we have to. This is not ours. Maybe it's manually created by the MongoDB itself. I think so. So let's keep it as it is. Okay. So let's go back. And here, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new separate method which helps me to store that user informations. Okay. So what we have to do is we have to create a new separate function to store that information. So right after here, const new user data is an arrow 6 function we are going to create. Okay, and this function should be an asynchronous function, async, and here I'm going to pass that decode value, and I'm going to pass that request and the response. Okay, inside this function we have to get all the necessary information. New const new user object. So what are the informations we need to keep? We need to keep the name. So from the decode value we will get the name. Then wait a second, we have to create the new user, but not in this way. Okay, so we already imported this user object which is coming from our model. Okay, so we have to create directly. So new user, inside this new user we are passing that data. So either you can create the data object separately then pass it inside, otherwise directly create it inside itself. In this case I'm just creating it inside itself. So here we need to give name colon decode value, not this dot name, come on, name name colon decode value dot name, then email. Make sure these values are coming from here, so better copy it and paste it. Then image URL, then user ID, then email verified, then role, then authentication time. Okay, so email is going to come from decode.email. Image URL is going to come from decode value dot picture. This is going to be picture because when you decode that value you will get the picture. So where we can say, okay, I'll show you decode value dot picture, you will get the object as picture only. Then user ID will come as decode value dot user ID, like this only, comma comma comma. Email verified, that is also is going to come from decode value dot email verified, comma. And a role, he is by default he is going to be a member, and the authentication time of that user is going to be decode value dot auth time. Okay, save the changes. So this is the data object of the new user. So now what we have to do is we have to save this information. So try and catch. So try const saved user equals await new user. This is the object which we created, new user dot save. We are going to save that new user. So once this user is saved, that will return an object dot status. Okay, so we have to return that response dot status as 200, response dot send user is going to be saved user. Okay, we are getting that response, and because we are getting the response over here, and I'm setting the response as this. If there is any error, what I'm going to set, I'm going to set the response as response.status. So you might wonder why I'm not using a return, because we will return the object over here, not here. Okay, status 400 internal server error, and send the message as not message, success as false. User data is haven't saved, and the message is going to be our error. Whatever the error we are receiving, we are going to send that error. Okay, so try and everything so far it's so good. Let's save the changes. And now where we have to call this method is, I have to call this method right over need to call this method over there, and let's see, let's give a try whether it is saving the details or not. So here we have to call this method. So we have to call, if that user is not exist only, we have to call that method new user data method, and it's need 3 different parameters, decode value, comma, then we have to pass request, comma, response. Save changes. Any issues? No issues. Let's go and give a request. Hit the send, and you can see that it's giving the created at and updated at timestamps automatically, right? I hope the data is now saved. Refresh, and you can see that inside our users object, our data is successfully saved. Users, I haven't mentioned it as user here, also user only, but where it's coming from user, what a miracle. I haven't used it as a users. File name is also user only, but how it's coming like users, that's quite confusing. This is the email we are using right now. How come it's possible? Let's delete this also. Nothing is inside now, and let's send this information again. It's showing authentication token expired. Okay, of course it will be expired, and let's go ahead and relogin. Okay, so now we get the new authentication token. Copy it. So this might happen for initially because this token, whenever you are working with the backend, we have to change it for the time to time because this will change constantly. Okay, so now let's go back. It's showing the information, role, number, everything is created. And let's go back here. Data. Let's refresh it now. Test users. We are getting that data. So it's saved successfully. Okay, so it's working perfectly. But I'm just wondering from where it's coming as users. I haven't mentioned anywhere as users. Only the model name as user only, but it's taking as users. Why? See? But how come it's taking users? That's confusing. I don't know why. That's not possible actually. Saving the details, everything is getting saved. Authors, app.js, users, it's coming here, /login. Here only we are getting the save method. Schema will be get created. Exports, where is the exports? Here I'm exporting the schema as user only. Then how come? Whoa, that confusing. That's really confusing. Require user.js, user schema, user schema. Okay, so that's quite confusing. Let's see why it's happening. Anyway, that's fine. So for the time being, what we are up to do is we done with the data is saved over here. Maybe user is a keyword. That's the reason it's automatically taking that users. I'm not sure. So let me check into it and let's continue. And we have to update this time. If the user is already exists, all we have to do is we have to update that user timing. So we already created that new user. So all we have to do, fetch that user information and we have to update that user authentication time alone. That's what we need to do. So authentication and everything is done and we decoded that value and we saved that new user. And by tomorrow's session, we have to update that user information. So I hope you guys understood till now. Even if you're having any questions or anything else, just leave it in the comment section. And